This programme was made with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland.
Over the years, many Irish missionary sisters have done Trojan work among disadvantaged communities in Africa. This is a few of their stories, the stories of unsung Irish heroines in Africa.
So education is really the basic.
I was sent up to Kenema. We had a big school there.
Irish missionaries went particularly for education. That was the first thing. You educate, you bring in the children, you educate. There was jobs for them then, civil service and schools, all of that.
As there were sisters teaching in it, everybody wanted to send especially the Muslims wanted to send their girls because they wanted a girls' school for their girls.
The students were fantastic. They really want to learn and they want to learn.
So most of the students I taught were Muslims.
The Africans will study. They want to study. They will do anything to get into school.
The students there appreciated what they got.
When I was in the school there teaching, the girls used to walk 10 kilometres to the school. And we knew some of them came without a breakfast and they had nothing.
We were counted rather strict, but it was later on I found out what the strict meant. It meant we didn't let them copy at exams.
I'm Paul Wright and welcome to the third programme of Unsung Irish Heroines in Africa. Down the years, many Irish women have worked in the educational field in Africa. Redempta Connolly, a Holy Rosary missionary sister, helped to establish and run a secondary school for girls in Sierra Leone from the 1950s onwards.
I was at the start of our first Catholic secondary school for girls up country. You know, there was one, the Joseph at Looney's had one in Freetown, but up country's a different kettle of fish. So it was tough going. I was there when we were carving the compound out of the bush, going to the Ministry of Works to get a bulldozer, grader. You spent your long vacation at that. And, you know, we just had one classroom we had the first class in the borrowed classroom of the primary school because most of the children came from there. And we had a boarding school there as well. I was in charge of that. But when we started getting the compound ready, we had one classroom and the principal's office was the first half of it and our bedroom was the other half with a screen between us, and that was how we started. So you're used to that kind of... You take it all in your stride.
Brid Power, a Franciscan missionary sister, helped to establish a school in Malolo, Kenya in the 1950s.
The house we had, it was just a wooden shack and there was nothing much in it. It was poverty stricken. Now the soil was fertile. There were a lot of whites. It was the White Islands, but there was no school for girls, and we wanted to start a school for girls. And the priests there were Kiltegans, and they were pushing it, and they got it eventually. But we only knew a week before it, and the boys' school had to give us a classroom, and they slept in it by night, and I taught in it by day. I was the only one, and here there were young girls coming in, and I was to start teaching them, even including Swahili. And I learned a bit of Swahili there because I had to do Swahili with the girls. And I didn't know it, but they were telling me. So that's how I picked up a little bit of Swahili. And it was sort of there. Then we built a dormitory and then it grew.
Celia Doyle, a Holy Rosary missionary sister, spent 15 years teaching in Kenema in Sierra Leone.
I was sent up to Kenema. We had a big school there. It wasn't so big at that time, but it became bigger because as there were sisters teaching in it, everybody wanted to send especially the Muslims wanted to send their girls because they wanted a girls' school for their girls. So most of the students I taught were Muslims. And of course Christians too. And I was there for actually 15 years in the end. I was there on the staff. I was in charge of boarders for some of the time, and that was a tough job because it was 24 hours a day. You were never got off duty if you're in charge of boarders. I do remember when we went out, we were careful that we weren't like pushing people into church or anything like that. And I remember calling them in the morning, and then I was more or less saying in some way or another that going to Mass was voluntary, you know. And the girl looked at me, and after a while said, Sister, will you make up your mind? Are we to go to Mass or not? You know, a different way of looking at the same thing, you know. She was putting it onto me.
And prior speaker Brid Power also had this to say about the school which she worked in.
We had all denominations in the school, even though not with the Catholic school. It was all denominations because the state was giving us funds for the boarding, not for anything else, like for boarding. And, you know, we didn't get paid, a minimal paying. As one brother worked it out, and he said, we got the price of a postage stamp a day. That was the missionary salary.
Literally, that's what you got into your, that's what you got. But that was a wage package.
That was a wage. It turned out to be the price of a stamp a day, a stamp home, which would have been about 20 pence. We got, I think, was at 500 shillings, kwacha they called it out there, a month. Now 500 kwacha wouldn't be a euro today.
What did you live on, Brid?
The congregation funds being sent out and so on and so forth, like, you know. We were able to live. We were never hungry, that's true. Food was cheaper, I'll admit, and we were able to, but we had to be careful.
And Redempta Connolly had her own challenges getting a new school up and running.
I trained as a national school teacher in Craiglockard, Edinburgh, as primary school teacher, so, you know, my skills were there. But they had a syllabus, you see, which would be very much, they were doing O-levels. And they had a junior certificate as well, so it was very academic. And we had to teach them. And English is the official language in the country. They speak a lot of patois, Creole, which would be more or less getting recognised now as a language, but it spoils their English. So, you know, in the boarding school, I would say to them, no English, you know, no Mende, or no Creole, which is worse, is a kind of a broken English. So to improve the standard of English. No, after the first 4 years, 4 survived to do their O-levels, and one of them got a Division 1. And that put our school on the map. That plus sports. We knew we had to get, because we were competing with the big Protestant school, we had to get our school on the map since we were only a small handful. 4 survived, you know. And through sports, I had a few good athletes. I pelted them around the field. I did everything that had to be done, and we made it.
And what kind of sports would the school have excelled in?
Running, relay, everything, netball. Netball would be another thing, but the sports were the big thing, and they were in houses, and you had inter-house competition for us to prepare them for. They take the sports very seriously. There can be riots and whatnot with sports. I enjoyed, and even, you know, we used to have inter-primary school for sports. Those priests that would be in charge of the primary schools, God's sake, they'd come in and there'd be nearly a fist fight over their particular school. And I used to have to feed them in the compound. I can still see the feeding of the 5,000, all with their plate up on them, licking it, more rice. You couldn't, really, but it was great fun when they all came in. They just swarmed the place. They all just lay down on the floor or anywhere. Those sports days were great.
Now, a major challenge which teachers throughout the world face is in choosing their students. Celia Doyle, during her years teaching chemistry in Kenema, came up with one melodic solution to this challenge.
One of the times I remember getting into a taxi. We used taxis there all the time. It was like a bus. And there was a girl in the front of it. And she greeted me as Sister Ibar. And I knew then she'd been to Kenema because that was my religious name. And I had changed back to my own name when I was in Kenema. So, but it meant that I knew she was from Kenema and not from somewhere else because the Kenema people wouldn't change. I was always Ibar to them. Anyway, but I couldn't remember who she was. And then she started to sing. Now, I had been kind of saying, why, you can go on back, but you're not able to do all that much. You're not young any longer, But anyway, she started to sing as follows. All kinds of everything are made of molecules. Molecules in their turn come from atoms. Subatomic particles are found in atoms. These are electrons, protons and neutrons. Proton is positive, neutron is not, electron is negative. These are the charges. Spinning round the nucleus are negative electrons. These facts remind us of the solar system. So I realised she had been in my Form 3 chemistry class because I'd come home sometime in the 70s when Dana won the song competition. I sort of learnt it, went back and made a chemistry song up to and used it. And of course, what you learn to a tune, you don't forget. And this very important bit of teaching, if you learn it to a tune, you do not forget it. And I was getting all the ordinary stuff over across in this. And but anyway, I was moved by that particular incident that the girl was able to, and she paid my fare as well, and that she was able to sing the whole thing. And I felt, I've done the right thing. I'm in the right place.
Earlier in our programme we heard Brid Power, a Franciscan missionary sister, talk about her teaching work in Kenya. By 1992, Brid had finished teaching and decided instead to do prison work in Livingstone City in Zambia.
Probably one of my most challenging things was towards the end in 92 I was out there and I had finished in the school at it and I'll go back and I will do prison work. And in the prison work, I just wanted to get into the prison. The prison, I knew it was there in Livingstone, and I knew the people were all there in a herd together, and that's all you could say.
This is Livingstone now in what country?
In Zambia.
In Zambia.
In Zambia. And the men there I was brought in, and I just asked, could I come into the prison? I got the chaplain there, and it's very hard to get into prison. So the chaplain brought me to the man in charge, and he said, could I come in? And he said, what would you do? And I said, well, what would you like me to do? So I said, well, I'd like to talk to the men, and maybe could I do some education with them, and maybe visit the sick, and so on like that, It was sort of new work to me now. But I remember my first day I went into the prison, the first thing I saw in the corridor was a huge fat rat. And I said, Mother of God, I said, is this what I'm coming into now, the rats? Where am I going, or what am I letting myself in for? But anyway, then I looked along, and outside wire, there were all the prisoners out in the yard, and there were hundreds of them there, literally. They were packed in there, ones on remand, and ones that had been committed, and you name it, all mixed up together. So I was brought through, and they showed me the room here I'd have. It was just desperate, all done. So, I got it painted up, and I'd got a bit of money from a source, the journalist I got it, and they gave me the money to start for the prison. And I painted up a room, and the brothers had old desks, and I got the desks down, and I went down to the village and I got little stools for them and made them, and then I said I'd love to visit the sick. Now the sick were pathetic. It was one long room, supposed to be the infirmary. There was one bed, I think, for the prisoner who was maybe in charge of the thing. Everything was just out of order, the toilets and things order. There was cockroaches that size, all running up the wall and down the walls, and the people, they were lying on mats. They might have some had a blanket, others didn't have. The heat was atrocious, and there was no fans, nothing in it. It was just below human experience. It was something
Dire now.
dire.
Yeah, and this is what the prisoners were living in 24/7, literally.
24/7. They were short of water. Some were brought out to get firewood to cook for them. Sometimes they'd tell me we had no food today. We might get one meal a day. It is terrible. There was one man, Paul Simasico. He was given to me as a sort of a guide and anything that I could get. So I said to Paul, we have to do something. And first of all, I went to the prisoners, and they were dirty. They had no soap, they had nothing. They were sores on their legs. There was mosquitoes, there were scratches, there was everything. And they were pathetic. And their stories were just so sad. But I said to Bob, we'll have to do something. But anyway, I said, I'll feed them first. So I said, what would they need most? And he said, soap and sugar and water. This now is for the sick, and this would be about maybe 20 or 30 out of the whole 200, because there was no way I could feed the whole 200. So I said, I'll start with the sick, and I began to visit them, and every week I went down. I brought some soap, and I got big bags of sugar, and then made small little bags and made them all up for them.
What did you use the sugar for, Brid?
Put it on their porridge, if they had a bit of porridge or a bit of food, or put it into water to drink. Just sugar and water, just to drink, to give them some energy. And that's all they had. There was medicines were practically nothing at the time, and they were dirty, and they say the toilet was out of everything. There was nothing, and they were so sick. And then listen to their stories, and you just say when I was going down, I said, God, I'm going down there. I used sort of freeze, but then when I got down there and came out, it was just a wonderful feeling that you've sort of went in, you talked to those men, and you gave them a little bit of brightness. You brought them books down, magazines, or anything you could pick up. Anything I have found, I brought down to them. Of course, they'd smoke this paper then, because that's all they had for a cigarette. But they'd read it first. Some of them were able to English. Most of them spoke English, actually. And I remember there was one man there, and his name was Moses. Now Moses was in as the president's pleasure. Seemingly he had murdered somebody way back, long before I went there. And Moses was sick in the hospital, and he was gone a little bit silly, say the least. And Moses was down there, and Moses always loved coming, and he had big mop of hair, and I thought that he had a whole lot of lice on him. I mean, there was lice every place. But, and I said to one of the guys, so this day I went down, they hadn't cut his hair. And I went along, and I didn't know I was talking to Moses. Down on my knees, he was on a mat, and I was giving him his sugar and his thing and all the rest of it. And I did see something. I said to one of the lads, cut his hair and let him see that he gets himself washed. And so the next thing I went to the next person, they said, Sister, lice. And they were picking them off me. And I said, Mother of God, and I could feel them all over me now. So after that I had a class, because by this time I had started education with them, and I got a few others roped in, some of the brothers, to do maths and things like that, and I was doing a bit of English with them and a bit of Christian living and all that sort of thing, and you're just giving them ideas. And so I went up home, and I went straight to the bathroom. I was covered in lice, and I think it was the most horrific feeling. I just turned on the water. It was cold water, but I jumped into it to get everything off me before it got to my head. So it was a great see them coming on, and everyone now they talk about religion. I had Muslims, I had Catholics, I had Seventh-day Adventists, I had every religion under the sun, no religions, and they were there.
And for those of you who've just tuned in, I'm Paul Wright, and you're listening to the third programme in our 8-part Unsung Irish Heroines in Africa series. The last speaker was Brid Power, a Franciscan missionary sister, talking about her work with prisoners in Zambia. Here's what else Brid had to say.
I remember, that the people, they all came to me because some were there in remand because they came into the country illegally and they wanted to go back. And I had to get a photographer to get their photographs taken, send them off. And
You're talking about plain, simple, bureaucratic tasks, and the guy just can't get the thing done. So he's stuck in a prison with, murderers, the worst kind of criminals possible.
Yeah, so you just have to give them the, take them. So I got the photographer up and took their photographs, passport photographs, sent them off to them, and an awful lot of bribery. They could go along, and they could go corruption. And there was one man, he was in prison, and then they lost his files, and he was in remand, and he was supposed to have murdered somebody, and they didn't, and he said he didn't. So I was tired of going to see about it. So then I went to the judge. I went to the courts, and I met the judge, and I said I wanted to see him. And they told me he was too busy. I said, I have time to wait. And he said, but you can't. I said, I'd like to meet him. And I said, it'll be all right. I said, but he won't. So next thing was he came out and he said to me, oh, Sister, what are you doing here? I said, I'm waiting to see you. I said, I believe you're busy, but I'll wait. No, I'm not busy at all.
Persistence pays.
That's what you have to do all the time. You just have to say, I want this done and I'm going to get it done. And I went in and I told him. And he said, that case is coming up for the last 2 or 3 years. And he's still on that time. And he said, the policeman died. He said, Sister, if I don't get that case by next week, I am letting that man go. I used to write the letters. They were great. You see, if the letter was typed, they would get it. They had no chance of typewriter. So I said, write your case out. What do you want? I'll type it out for you. I'll put it into English for you. The right English, and send it off and sign it. So this did hurry on their cases. And so this was the work. It was, looking back now, I never thought of it much at the time, but looking back now, I'm telling you that how fast it did work, and I remember one time there were 2 boys, and they were young lads. They came into the country illegally and were in there, and I said, you can't have them in there. And I said, where will you put them? Will you take them? I said, where could I take them? But I said, I'll send them back. I said, I'll get money, to send them back. And a friend I never met, but he did send me money, and he's from Malta. Never met him, but money used to come from him, dollars, every so often. And I said, I'll get that changed into the local currency. And I went up to the immigration department. I said, let these boys go. So they rang me up and they said, there's somebody going up that way and on the train, and if you have the money, they can go with them. I said, yeah. So I was able to, that money that I got was $50, and that $50 brought those 2 young fellas back to Tanzania. So small little things that you could do, but this was the work that the injustice that was there, and you're trying to break down that injustice, and they could see that I was trying to help. And in the end, immigration didn't like me. But in the end, they got to know me and they knew why I was coming.
I'd say they respected you. If maybe like is not the word, or there was plenty of dislike, but respect was there.
They knew I was honest, like, and I wasn't going to do anything that was sort of underhand or anything like that to get them out. But they themselves could be just as crooked, like, so it's the way that things go, like. But that work was really good, but it was sort of, I had to steel myself to go in. But when I went in, forgot all about it, and you can do it. This was the amazing thing. I just said it must be God's grace that was there, that really you could go in and you can do it. And I remember one time I was signing in. I had to sign in every day and sign out that I wasn't left in the prison. But I was there when they were signing in, and this CID man came. He said, "What are you coming down to the prison?" I said, to see the people here. He said, "They are not worth it." I said, "They're human beings," I said. And Paul was with me, and Paul stood up and he said, "Sister Brid is trying to help these people, to give them something." You just felt that if you can do something for them, they are people, they're humans, they have a life, and some of them didn't do anything wrong.
This programme was made with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. Until our next number 4 programme in this 8-part Unsung Irish Heroines in Africa series, from myself, Paul Wright, bye for now.